areas of their life, they just couldn't trade. Couldn't trade. I was working with them one-on-one, and it was just really frustrating me. And so my youngest son was born and had kind of some downtime during that, infancy period. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go deep and figure this out. And so I did. And after about a 2-year cycle where I became sort of a neuropsychology expert, I discovered the one brain network that is the reason for most trading failures. And if this isn't fixed, it doesn't matter what you're doing, your setup strategies or approaches just simply won't work for you. So that's why I'm so excited, because it's truly universally applicable. Now, for most of you, I don't know the level of expertise in the room, but media and certainly all the stuff you see on YouTube, people puffing themselves up and crowing about their gains, being real quiet about their losses. People think trading is exciting, dynamic, thrill ride, and you push buttons, you make lots of money, you get your cars, your girls, your yachts, all that stuff. And I spent a number of years in Manhattan, sort of steeped in that world, and it taught me a lot. The reality is, as somebody who's been doing this for really since I was in my late teens, successful trading is actually very tedious and painfully boring. So I joke, I've basically been subsidized to sit around every day and stare at screens and then noodle about with different research projects and different experimentation, coming up with different edges in the market and optimizing those edges. And essentially the real experience of trading is sitting there doing nothing for long periods of time, waiting for the market to offer you an inappropriate price, a discount. You take a position, the market comes back up to a fair value, you take your money. That's trading. And so Ben Franklin said it best: idle hands are the devil's playthings. And this is really, really true. So, and this is why most traders' expectations start out like this, and then they get the crap beaten out of them, and their reality looks a little bit more like this. So a little bit on my background, because I want you to know I come from experience. How do I know this is true? And why should you listen to what I'm about to tell you? As Fausto said, I've written a couple of books, including, and this is going to be important as we go through this, I wrote the book on optimizing your trading edge, right? So I'm steeped hardcore, and I've done a lot of consulting for institutional and individuals, basically helping them break down their trading strategies and finding the low-hanging fruit to optimize those, make them better. The mechanics, the technicals, if it exists, if it's been written about, I've probably explored it. So that's my background. Very technical, very hardcore, a lot of tape reading. My work's been featured all over the place. I've done a lot of public speaking in the past and seminars and things before I started a family. And then if you're interested, you can always go to boyoder.com, or I post trades and talk about some philosophy stuff on X at Bo_Yoder. So interestingly enough, gosh, it's been a while now, but I got my MBA from Boston University because I've been trading stocks for so many years, and they're just these bloodless symbols on my screen. And I wanted to see, what was really in the inner workings and understand that better. And that education really helped me in my stock analysis and forecasting. Okay, so I've been there, done that. I've had a lot of interesting chances to work with people in all different walks of life, from just beginning to ultra high net worth individuals to institutions dealing with policies and the bureaucracy of those. And so you start to see patterns emerge. And so one of the biggest and most obvious patterns is one that I think you'll all recognize. I certainly was the prime suspect for this early on in my career, is that you always look to the mechanical. If I just had the right indicator, if I just had the right pattern, right? It's always technique, it's mechanics, it's secrets. And the reality is that none of that matters at all unless you address the real problem, which I sort of had figured out some workarounds for just heuristically by trial and error, but I didn't understand neurobiologically what was happening. And so it was very inefficient and sort of hit or miss. So the real problem is that, and Fausto can echo this, when we first started, trading was very, very different. I think I spent $600 a month just on my charting package. The data was another couple hundred. It was about $1,000 a month all in before I even pushed a button. Commissions were $35 each way, so you were down almost $100 just taking a trade, even if you were going to scratch it. Very, very different. Now, this is the NinjaTrader platform, which is one that I use. It's free, and you log the thing in, and you've got 100 indicators available, right? So you've got this embarrassment of choice. There's a million people touting their ideas, their strategy, their system, their approach. It becomes a my big brother will beat up your big brother kind of system. The reality is that you could probably challenge me to take any one of these indicators, and I could produce some kind of a positive expectancy model out of it. So there isn't one one that's perfect and the others are crap. It's all relative, right? And that makes it very, very difficult, especially if you're a beginner. And so you fall into the same trap that golfers do, where they just buy new clubs, hoping their game will improve. Thousands and thousands of dollars spent that could be much better spent on lessons and time practicing. Okay, so the trading fantasy is, what we all expect. You push buttons. Here I am. I've got my t-shirt and my flip-flops on. I'm in my little office. I worked from home my whole life until I had kids. Now focus is not possible, so I have a little office. I call it the monastery. I go to focus in on my trading during the trading day. I have a trade on now in the Nasdaq. Actually, I took the 12 o'clock false breakdown. So that's in process. I do this, not every day, but probably at least 4 days a week. I'm in multiple positions. The problem is, and I have a weird view into this because I've worked with a lot of these people, is that the trading fantasy is you push these buttons, you have all the things you could ever want in life. The reality is, having worked with some of these people and gained their trust, is that the top traders are very, very vulnerable to their own self-destructive behaviors. So tons of substance abuse, an inner emptiness that no material thing, no car, no yacht or watch can fill. They usually have an endless string of failed relationships and marriages. They're always chasing the dragon of enough, which kind of leaves them feeling like a loser because the goal keeps shifting. I had one client who had a giant yacht, and it was his pride and joy. It was a real status symbol and a symbol to himself that he had made it. And that thing was his pride and joy until somebody parked a yacht that was 20 feet bigger next to it. Instantly, the yacht didn't matter anymore. He literally sold it and bought a bigger one. Right? So you can't chase enough because it's an impermanent goal. The ironic reality is a lot of these individuals, you probably know some of their names, and they have a lifestyle that you all would probably envy or think that you want for yourself. But if you really get to get them into a place where they can trust you and open up to you, you find out that often there's a lot of imposter syndrome. And even though they've got all the material things and all the success and the status, they feel like a failure deep down inside. All right. So this is your get out of jail free card, because the game is won between your ears and everything else is just pushing buttons. And I could go into a multi-hour, lecture on neurobiology and why this is all happening on a endocrine level. But I don't think most of you are as interested in that. You don't really want to know what every component for the car is. You just want a luxury car. You push the button, start it, stop it, and get where you want to go. So let's start this off and get into the fun stuff. I have a question for you. Why is it that humans repeat the same damaging, dysfunctional, and self-sabotaging trading behaviors over again and again and again? And I can say with confidence, you have all done it. I certainly did it, and painfully, since I traded live real money in front of people for really the first part of my career. I did it in front of a giant crowd. So all of the humiliation and embarrassment and the stupid mistakes and the impulsive actions I did, in under the spotlight, which made it hurt all that much more. And so I know you've all had that experience where you do something and then you go back and you're like, why did I do that? That market went right to my price target and I jumped out here. What was I thinking? And this is also why you are a paper trading god and a real money bum. And I know you've all experienced that. I obviously struggled with that a lot earlier in my career. And again, I created coping mechanisms, but they didn't address the root. So really, in the last 5 years, my personal trading has transformed in a way that's really quite magical. I don't have to grit my teeth and white knuckle my way through positions anymore. So this is the good news. It's not a moral failing. There's nothing wrong with you. It's not that you're not smart enough or you don't have the right tools. Most of your failures and frustrations in trading are coming from the activity of your brain's default mode network. Now, for most of you, never heard of this before. Here you can see the default mode network imaged on an MRI. The reason is this was discovered in 2009. fMRIs, which are movable MRIs, so you can see the brain in real time. I think they're about $1 million a pop. It's very hard to get those things funded. And so they really didn't start studying this network until about 2012. So you're not going to see this in any of the trading literature. I literally developed this from scratch. This is the first time that I've ever shared this in any kind of an open forum in detail. So this is all going to be new information for you. So pay close attention because this is the golden key. Now, the default mode network is a series of brain regions that activate when you are not actively engaged in a task, like the moments after trade entry, right? So come with me on this little journey, right? You're spending all this time in analysis. You're planning your trade. You're waiting for your entry point. You figure out your position sizing. All these things are happening in a very analytical And that engages a different part of the brain and puts the default mode network offline. Okay, now you've taken the trade. Click, you put your stops in, click, and the trade is on. You've double checked everything. And now what? You do nothing. You just sit there and you wait for resolution. There's nothing you can do, that you can't make the trade better through some kind of effort. You're just stuck on the sidelines, passive. And during that moment, the default mode network slams into dominance, and that's when all hell breaks loose. And this is because the default mode network is deeply connected to the animal's survival brain, which gets triggered into defensive action over and over by the stresses and the uncertainty of the trading process. It acts as a gatekeeper and a filter for your thoughts and connections via the self-referential inner dialogue. So if you just sit there in silence and just experience reality, all of us will have some form of a talking to yourself, right? For some, it's visual. For some, it's more emotional. For some, it's very, very language based. We all have it. That is your experience of your brain's default mode network. Now, my opinion, which in the last 5 years has come to a total belief that it is factual, period, full stop, is that the DMN is the root neurobiologically of all trading execution and management failures. And I find it ironic that it's the demon on your shoulder that whispers in your ear, oh, you should trail your stop. Oh, we should probably scratch this trade, right? Manipulating you to do the wrong thing at the wrong time. And isn't it funny that the medical terminology, DMN, looks like demon? So this is your inner demon, literally and biologically. I call it the inner jerk because it tries to jerk you around as it manipulates you. So an overactive inner jerk is connected with self-limiting behaviors, depressive rumination, big for trading, narcissism, ADHD, schizophrenia. It's very likely that a schizophrenic who hears voices and has experience with other entities is actually experiencing their inner dialogue with a brain dysfunction that makes them think it's a separate person. So fascinating science done in that space, which then I can lead back to default mode network activity and how it works in the brain. Low self-esteem, always an issue for traders in a drawdown. Obsessive thinking, most of us have probably engaged in that after entry, trying to decide whether we trail our stops or take partials. Self-sabotage, and then, of course, constant anxiety, stress, and overwhelm, which until about 2 or 3 years ago, I just ate. I played sports at an elite level, and my upbringing sort of taught me that if you want to perform at the highest level, you just have to kind of hurt all the time and deal with it. And so I white knuckled my way pretty much through my whole career. And now all that's gone. And the ability to trade feeling light and free on the deepest, most internal level is a level of freedom that's really hard to communicate. Now, a quiet default mode network is connected with peace, bliss, calm, right? All good things. If you've done yoga, you've probably heard the term samadhi, which is the sense of sort of Zen-like, inner peace and calm. People use the word oneness a lot, talking about this state achieved in different ways. You also have incredible focus when you have a quiet DMN and creativity. The ideas just pop into your head. Everything just goes, it flows. Another term for this is flow state, right? When you're in flow state, everything is frictionless and free. If you've played sports at a high level, you know what that's like. This is a quiet default mode network experience. If you go into the spiritual realm, enlightenment is a word that's used a lot. And that usually kind of puts people's brakes on, right? So take a step back. We're not going to talk about crystals or meditation or any of these other sort of woo-woo things that often end up being a part of the mindfulness, inner work world. So my challenge was I had these very high achieving people who for some reason couldn't follow a simple trading plan. They just couldn't, right? Their brain wouldn't allow it. And so I know these people aren't foolish or stupid. They've achieved enormous things in other aspects of life. And they also come from all kinds of different backgrounds. So anything to do with belief and anything that took a lot of time, right? These guys are very busy. It wasn't going to work. So I had to go find something that would be universal to anyone with a human brain and really be hardcore hacking the neurobiology of the human organism, right? So as I joke, if I kick your dog, insult your wife, and wreck your car, and you do these techniques, they will still work, right? So it has nothing to do with me or any kind of relationship that I have with the folks that I work with. That was very, very critical for me. So don't worry, there's nothing wacky coming your way. But it is a paradigm shift when you can actually, biohack your own brain to make you a better trader. And this is also the fundamental neurobiological reason why mindset work, personal development, self-improvement, as we probably have all experienced, hasn't always worked out for you. Because most personal development programs work about as well as telling a child not to be afraid of the monsters under their bed. And it's about as effective because you're not addressing the brain systems where the fear is originating from. And this is very close to me with little kids. If they get spooked out and afraid of something, no amount of logic, getting flashlights, looking under the bed, whatever, it's going to convince them that everything is okay, because that's not accessing the part of the brain where the fear is originating from. That's making them feel uncomfortable. So I want to teach you how to stop trying to think your way to riches, think your way to success, or even worse, follow my career and white knuckle your way to consistent profitability by just existing in a suffering state. And you're going to do this by attacking the root cause of trading stress, anxiety, and loss of discipline, which are those impulsive actions that you regret later. Bottom line, if you can slay this monster in your brain, that demon on your shoulder who whispers in your ear and consistently derails your trading success, then you can show up as your best, most objective self. And in doing so, you'll see an immediate increase in consistency. That's the other thing. It's kind of neat. If you go down the hardcore meditation route, which I have, it could be months before you have a breakthrough. It's really hard to kind of stick with it. It's super boring. You feel anxious and weirded out, when you're starting out that kind of practice. This is not the case. You're going to get very instant, you're going to feel it, first of all, like a slap to the face. Plus, you'll see the changes in your trading behavior. So it's very measurable and, very satisfying. So now the question in your mind is probably, okay, if this thing is harming me, why does the default mode network exist if it causes so much trouble for traders? So to understand this, we got to go back to the caveman era, where we were all hunter-gatherers and we were just existing in a literal hand-to-mouth world. Your biggest threat in that era for death was starvation, malnutrition. And so the brain separated into two states, the subconscious and the conscious. The conscious is your high octane, high glucose load. It uses a lot of the blood sugar that you so preciously, got from the food that you were able to scrabble out of the world. And the subconscious is automated and simple, and it takes very little blood glucose to make it run. So that's why scientists have discovered that about 90% of our experience and actions and choices on any given day that we're awake are coming from the subconscious. It's a more efficient network, but it has limitations. And it produces these little subconscious survival programs, which are little algorithmic loops of behavior as the result of negative experiences. So you're out, you're hunter-gathering, you're a caveman, you see a scary bear, the bear tries to eat you, and you run screaming back into your cave, right? That's a traumatic experience. During that time, the subconscious basically goes on record mode, and it takes a snapshot of all the environmental factors, all the things and behaviors and choices that led up to that traumatic experience. And then it synthesizes a reason, which may or may not be in alignment with the reality of the thing. And herein lies one of the secrets. And it will then create a loop to create enormous avoidant behavior. Okay, so you're back in the cave. The program that probably existed for that caveman was outside the cave is uncertain and scary, and there are bears. Inside the cave, it's warm and dry, and there are no bears. Therefore, I will stay in the cave. And the default mode network, once it gets fixated on one of these little subconscious survival programs, will manipulate you ruthlessly to do what it takes to keep yourself what it thinks as safe. All right. And the default mode network will manipulate you, again, viciously, using three attack vectors. Strong emotions, right? We've all experienced that. Fear, uncertainty, sense of dread in the pit of your stomach, shame and embarrassment are two very manipulative emotions. You probably all felt those as traders. Procrastination is another attack vector. The market's looking pretty good, but I'm kind of hungry. Maybe I'll just have lunch and avoid taking a position, and we'll see what happens later. And then the other one, which I find most interesting, physical pain. So a number of these clients, when they get to a particular psychological trigger point in terms of performance or size and leverage, their back will hurt and they can't sit in the chair and trade. Their hip will hurt and they can't sit in the chair and trade. And boy, when they leave that trading room and they go walk around somewhere else, the pain vanishes. So you start to see these patterns about how the brain is manipulating you. In the yoga world, they talk about the elephant and the rider, right? This is the rider beating you with his whip, trying to get you to get away from the thing that it thinks is a threat. And if you've ever had any experience trading real money or any size, there's a lot of psychological distress and pain associated with that. It makes total sense. The default mode network will get miswired. So the cool thing is that the default mode network is capable of instant behavioral change. So if you have a caveman who's stuck in his cave and is doing everything, including manipulating others to bring food so he doesn't have to leave the cave, maybe he's making their beds or cleaning up the cave and having them pay in food and water, people will go to extraordinary and bizarre avoidance behaviors as a result of these DMN loops. But if you get to a moment where the big scary bear you think is outside is replaced by an actual scary bear in the cave with you, the default mode network is capable of instant behavioral change. And so this is one of the mechanisms that I'm harnessing and why it can work so quickly. You can have somebody who's stuck in a loop for most of their adult life. If you can identify it and get to the root of it, you can change it in about 10 to 14 days, which is a huge breakthrough compared to all the other sort of subconscious, mindset, mindfulness, mind work stuff, which is pretty hit or miss and can take, an indeterminate amount of time. So I call this whole suite of tools and techniques that I created the myelolipsis technique. Now, myelolipsis stands in the root Greek for mind download, because that's literally what you're doing. You are downloading a new program in the mind, just like you'd put a patch on a piece of faulty code on a computer or a phone. And so the myelolipsis technique allows you to rip out the emotionally impulsive trading behaviors by the roots. It disrupts the emotional signaling system so that you can maintain your cool, calm state of mind and execute an objective analysis process without being stuck in a cycle of succumbing to emotional impulses or, like I did for decades, being forced to just white knuckle it, gut it out while you experience continual suffering as you trade. You'll have fewer missed opportunities. You'll better have an ability to let your good trades run. You'll be better at objectively cutting your losses short when things aren't going great without experiencing a sense of failure or negative self-worth. And you're actually going to enjoy trading and feel like you're in the flow versus engaging in very stressful financial warfare with the markets. You'll experience a near instant change in your trading results for the better. Again, 10 to 14 days, you start to think different, you start to behave different. Bigger gains, smaller losses, less stress, and a much more consistent and confident trading experience. Now, if I was pitching some kind of indicator to you, wouldn't that be sexy, right? You'd be pretty excited about it. Well, this is the root. So if you fix this, everything changes. So you don't have to pick a new strategy or learn a new approach or anything like that. You just make yourself into a better you, a better trader, and probably the valid edges that you have experienced or experimented with in the past can be pulled out of dusty storage and brought back to bear. So my promise to you is that you can have control over your brain's survival systems, hijacking their manipulation, creating a state of effortless discipline as you execute your trading plan. So you can finally get back to enjoying your trading without feeling the intense emotional highs and lows. I got to trade on now. I'm not peeking at it. It was a good trade. It was entered well. I stopped set. It'll do what it'll do. It's got great risk reward. I think I had 20 or 30 handle risk, and I should get at least 100 out of it. So there's no stress there. And this will not only help eliminate trading stress and anxiety, it will immediately and positively impact your bottom line. So we're at a fork in the road. You have one of two options. You can go down this neurobiology route with me and train your brain to think a little bit differently, so that you can enjoy your trading and not have all that stress. Or you can try to shut out the inner jerk, the default mode network, with just distraction techniques, which is something I did for a lot of years. And then also you can just gut it out and endure the pain and just live in a miasma of discomfort and anxiety, and just follow the rules no matter how much it hurts. Or you can have a radical transformative experience. So let me just bust through a couple of case studies to show you how profound this can be. So for the majority of people, I think the biggest thing that I work with, and a lot of the people that I work with one-on-one, it's a 5-figure consulting contract, so they have pretty substantial accounts. But still, even if they're high net worth and they've got a lot of money and they can afford to lose a lot of money on a given trade, there's a level of account size self-sabotage that almost always comes up. So this is somebody who can trade $1 million account fine, but at 5 they fall apart, right? And in the smaller levels, somebody might start out with 5 or 10 grand, run that up to 100, and then they fall apart. So I had a client, a very nice lady who was the daughter of a man who was the first in a large family to go to college and sort of escape into the middle class lifestyle. They lived in a suburban house. They had a nice backyard. And the cousins and the extended family were over all the time, and she'd play with the cousins. She had two experiences that we dug into once we figured out what her issue was. And her issue was that she could take any amount of money and run it up to six figures, and then everything would go to hell. And she would jump stops. She'd inappropriately position size. She'd get emotionally impulsive and exit too soon, or take scratch losses. When eventually the trade would go to her profit target. It was just this loop of great trading up until a certain level, and then disaster. Great trading back to that same level, disaster. So what we discovered was, as a child, anytime her family exhibited some form of material wealth, they put in an above ground pool, they put a deck on their house. All the shirt tail relatives would come and try to borrow money from her dad, and he knew they weren't going to pay it back, so it was basically a gift, and he'd tell them no. And there'd be a lot of screaming and shouting, a lot of harsh words, and they'd leave in a huff, and they'd take all of their children, i.e., her cousins, with them. So very logically, her little child mind, experienced that, negative emotion, and made a connection. What was the environment around which these fights and blowups and the loss of her playmates happened? Well, it was money. So money's fine. You need money to live, to buy clothes and eat and have a roof over your head. But if you have too much, or even worse, if you show it off, then you're going to lose your family and your friends, right? And that's the default mode network subconscious survival program she had in there. So once we identified that was her issue, and that was the glass ceiling that her mind was imposing upon her and her trading, and why she couldn't break through, we went into the meiosis technique and addressed that very specifically. And she had a breakthrough. She blew the account past the $100,000 mark, no problem. 250, 500, and was able to then just actually get the money that her hard fought trading knowledge and experience led her to deserve, without the unforced errors, the self inflicted wounds. Another very common thing is trading size self sabotage. Another case study. This client, didn't matter how much money he had in his account, it was the amount of size. All right, so he was a very consistent trader, making really good money, multiple six figures, but he just couldn't get his size up over about a $3,000 risk. Right, so that's fine. A 2-to-1 is $6,000, a 3-to-1 is $9,000. That's good money, and he was living a fine life. But he wanted to break through. He wanted to get to seven figures in a year, and he couldn't. He just couldn't do it. Every time he'd take a $5,000 risk or higher, trying to up his game, he'd self sabotage. And so we went back and tried to figure out, what confusion does the default mode network have? What is being triggered here? What survival program is going active, which is causing him to make these unforced errors? Sure enough, we found it. He had a job he hated as a young man. Hated getting up. He hated wearing the uniform. He hated going to work. He hated his boss, who was not a nice person. And guess how much money he made during a month on that crappy job that he hated? And by the way, this guy's in his middle age, so this is a long time ago, decades. $3,000. And sure enough, if you make more than $3,000, he started to refer back to his youth and all the hell he had to go through to make $3,000. And oh my God, if you lose $3,000, it'd be like a month's worth of my life as a young adult. And so the default mode network would start manipulations, and boom, he'd end up back on the skids. Same thing. We addressed it using the meiosis technique. He had his breakthrough. He changed that internal subconscious survival program. His mind gave up on trying to defend himself against size. Now he's trading a 5-figure size, and is really getting a lot more out of the positions that he takes. And to go to a kind of a dark place, which is interesting, a lot of really high performance, high net worth people had horrible childhoods. I would say Elon Musk right now is sort of the poster child for that. If you've read his biography, very traumatic childhood, a lot of abuse, a lot of bad stuff happened to him in childhood. And a lot of these people kind of have a chip on their shoulder, and they want to prove themselves to the world, and really to themselves, because of those negative experiences. So it's a very dark place. It's remarkable how many people I've worked with, once you really get into a trust-based relationship, will open up about that stuff. And in many cases, it's because the work we're doing on the surface through meiosis is actually changing their inner dialogue at a deep level. And they'll just spontaneously come out and talk about the childhood abuse experience and how they've been in therapy for decades. And this thing they've been doing for their trading has actually transformed their life experience and their relationships in other aspects. So, classic case study. Was very much a Cinderella story. There was a divorced dad of this only child. Marries a new wife. She was the evil stepmother. She was very cruel to him. Lots of emotional abuse. Lots of locking in your closet to punish you. And so he created, and rightfully so, a survival loop, a subconscious survival program, um, which was to not get noticed. Because if you get noticed, you probably get yelled at, and you'll end up locked in the closet. So in trading, same thing. He was doing great in his trading, doing like 30% a year. But I guess from reading Market Wizards and a lot of these other books, that was sort of his ceiling, and he didn't want to stand out and break any records. So sure enough, when his trading would surge past these levels of performance, this trauma programming would say, "Oh my God, if my mom notices me, I'm going to get yelled at. My stepmom's going to put me in the closet." And I know that sounds silly, but that's exactly the reason on a root neurobiological level that these things happen. So we went into that specific. Luckily, he was able to trust me enough to open up about that. We went and addressed it very directly. Again, kind of created a patch for the program in your brain, and he reported that not only did his trading break out, and he was able to get what he really deserved from his skill set, but also his personal life. He was drinking a lot less, and anyway, a lot of good things, great stuff in his marriage, etc. So this is enormously, enormously powerful, and way deeper rabbit trail than I can get into, but it's remarkably useful for substance abuse. And I got a lot of crazy stories about that. Now, to lighten things up a little bit, let me tell you kind of a silly story about myself. So I got married when I was right around 40. So I spent a lot of my life, in New York, Boston, other places as a bachelor, and I hate dishes, hate them with a passion. And so I got very good as a bachelor at making meals, using the same frying pan in different stages, doing things to avoid doing dishes. Well, fast forward, I'm married. I've got 3 kids. Well, there are dishes. So my wife might be up, kids are in the bath, or maybe they're going to bed, and I'm doing dishes. And it's a hateful task. I feel angry and resentful. All these negative emotions are bubbling out of nowhere. And it's silly, right? It's illogical. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm doing something good for my family. And I don't know. I was raised differently. I'm not going to, hire somebody to do that for me. I'm going to pick up my own dog's crap and do my own dishes. Thank you very much. Right. So here I am doing dishes, hating it. And I suddenly realized this is irrational. Therefore, it must be a default mode network subconscious survival loop. What is scary about dishes that my brain is trying to defend me from? Sure enough, I realized that, when we were growing up, my mom would cook dinner and then we'd have to do the dishes. And she was a dish collector. So the dishes all kind of had a story and were important to her. So I was inside of kind of a damned if I do, damned if I don't experience. If I didn't do the dishes, I got in trouble. If I did the dishes, there was always some kind of friction about, did I do them right? And, this may have been just a number of short issues, but again, if you're getting yelled at by your mom and your brain opens up the recording device and dishes are the reason she's yelling at you, the default mode network might start to defend you against dishes. And to take this to an extreme, people will do enormous and bizarre behavior loops to get out of into these avoidant behaviors. I could have easily ended up as somebody who just lives, and eats off paper plates for the rest of their life, right? To take that to an extreme. So, now I understand why the default mode network is defending me against dishes with negative emotions. So I created Mealipsis technique tool to do that, took care of it. Now don't care about dishes. So there's no internal friction. Okay. So that is what I want for you. You kind of get a sense for what this can do. It's sort of like the fantasy from the movies of hypnosis. Somebody waves a watch in front of you and says, you no longer want to smoke, or you're not going to screw up your trading anymore. And then magically it just sort of fixes. Well, it's not, it's not woo like that, but it's quick, it's efficient, it's reliable, it's repeatable. And if you do the work, it will reprogram the brain and you'll have a very different experience and outcome. And that's what I want for everybody listening. I want you to realize that no matter what approach you have to the market, what market you're trading, any of these things, you don't have to be in pain. And if you're not in pain, you're going to trade much, much better. So I want an effortless, stress-free analysis and management experience for all of you so that all your trading feels just like your paper trading. and that's really the only way I can describe this if you haven't experienced it yourself, is think about how light and free, how curious you are when you're paper trading. You're interested, you're developing something, it feels good, you're making progress. Uh, that's what regular trading at any size level can feel like. And I want you to be able to access that. So no matter how much money you have on the line, you can disconnect from the subconscious survival loop that obsesses over the amount of money it is and the amount of money you could lose. And did you make the right decision? And should you trail your stop? And obsess, obsess, obsess. That can all go away. And that's the power of the meal ellipsis technique. So that's what I want for you. If you'd like, we can go to learn.boyoder.com. I'm going to do a training on this, and I can walk you through what that will be. So go to learn.boyoder.com. We're going to do a one-day seminar on January the 4th. It's a Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. So we'll get through the holidays, and I think that's a perfect time for, whatever frustrations or wishes for the next year you want to eliminate the pain of last year, this year, and get into the new year with a fresh start, with a new you from a trading perspective. During that one-day seminar, we'll go deep into the neurobiology of trading success, and you'll gain the tools you need to reprogram your brain for effortless discipline. And optimal trading performance as a result. You'll stop the unforced errors and the self-sabotage. So it's fully comprehensive. Usually I work with people one-on-one, and I figured out a way to give you what you need to do it for yourself, which means I can charge a heck of a lot less because it doesn't take that much time for me. And so I really appreciate Fausto giving me a chance to kind of expose this to the trading world at large. It's kind of an interesting thing to bring out because it truly is the pivot point for so many traders that I've worked with, where I started off on the technical side, helping them with technicals, the mechanics, et cetera, and they were stuck on the mental side, and then I'd use this to kind of help them break through. So now I'm actually going for the breakthrough first before I ever, share any trade secrets or help someone with any of the mechanics of their trading. And so it's going to give you everything you need to transform your trading experience so that your real money trading feels light and stress-free like paper trading. And there's some resources that I wanted to include as bonuses. So along with the session, of course, that'll be recorded. If you're not able to get there live, that's fine. You can have the recordings. There'll be a 15-minute pre-trading meal ellipsis session that will kind of pre-frame the day and biologically put your brain chemistry in a state of relaxation and flow so that you start your trading day with clear, emotionless objectivity for better analysis and timing. Then, and this is a real cool one, there's a 5-minute post-entry meal ellipsis session that will derail your inner jerk, that default mode network in your brain, so it doesn't begin the process of anxiety, stress, and second guessing that leads to a loss of discipline and emotionally impulsive actions, which of course damage your edge and cost you money, or even worse, leave a heck of a lot of money on the table because you chicken out of a trade, then it goes to your profit target. The third bonus is for people who trade deeper timeframes and have the time to do it. A 15-minute post-entry ellipsis. More is better, so you can go deeper and get more change of state, more inner peace and calm. If you're trading, let's say, a 15-minute or an hourly or something like that, or if you're a swing trader. And then the bonus number 4 is what I call the mind gym. So I developed a positive expectancy trading system, not to be the best trading system that it would exist, but to create an experience which is like doing a bicep curl with a weight for your, making your arms bigger. If you trade this way, it's super, super simple. There are only a couple of rules. Then 2 things will happen. One, you're going to force your demons into the open, which then allows you to focus on them, identify them, and address them with the meal ellipsis technique. And number 2, it proves that you can follow a very, very simple plan because there's no excuse. It's not subjective. It's very prescribed. If you break a rule, it's probably because you got hijacked by the manipulations of the default mode network. So this is a little bit like can you do 100 push-ups before we start teaching you something else kind of a thing. So I wanted to make sure everybody has that. That'll be a bonus as part of that one-day seminar. And this could be the only model you trade. It works great, and it has a positive expectancy. So we'll talk about that as a great way to integrate what you've learned about the meal ellipsis technique. And then because one size does not fit all, and different people have different experiences and different sticking points, I'm also going to include a one-on-one session where we'll get together, on a phone call to chat and talk about your biggest sticking points. So you have some individualized instruction. And again, you'll see big change if you actually do the work in about 10 to 14 days. So it's a very quick flip. So I added a couple of some of my favorite comments on Meolipsis. This is probably my favorite from a fellow because he was a hardcore expert in neurolinguistic programming and hypnotism, which are sort of the when you read the pitch on those is the fantasy of what Meolipsis actually achieves reliably and repeatably. And he actually was able to get to change in his subconscious fast in a way that he wasn't with traditional. In other words, he could produce change in others with his NLP and his hypnosis, but it didn't work for him. And so this changed that for him. So definitely read that. And then also, if you don't do it, you're not going to get the result. And so Carrie kind of fell off the wagon. She took a $500 account to 10 grand, and then kind of got a little arrogant, got a little comfortable, and stopped doing her Meolipsis. And sure enough, the default mode network came back online. She started falling back into old habits. Excuse me. I guess a sip of tea here. And went back into the behavioral loops that was causing her frustration back in the beginning. And then the final one is just a mind blower. I'm still sort of mystified by this, and it's really, really cool. So Victor is a client on the trading front, but he's also a professional athlete. He's a professional windsurfer. And he was on lockdown in the Canary Islands. So this is about an 18-minute video, and I want everyone to listen to it because it's really cool. And he couldn't leave his apartment. So here's this pro athlete stuck there for months. And so we're talking about trading, and we're going through the trading pieces. And he said, can we work on my athletic stuff with this? And I said, sure. So he went through a process, which is described in the video. And he actually, I kid you not, lying on his back on his couch, he taught himself to do a double backflip, which is a very difficult trick that he didn't have. He couldn't do it. And then after the lockdowns, he goes out, he gets on his board, he lands it over and over the very first time. So this really goes to prove my underlying premise, which is the mind is a computer, and it can be programmed if you understand the programming language and how to apply the patch. So just to recap, if you register now at learn.boyoder.com, then you'll get access to the seminar, and I look forward to seeing you there. You'll get the bonuses: a 15-minute pre-trading Meolipsis, a 5-minute post-entry Meolipsis, and a 15-minute post-entry Meolipsis for deeper time frame traders. Plus, you'll get the Mind Gym trading system, which is sort of the proof that you have the skill that you need to execute any system. It's so simple, there's no excuse. So if you have any issues, boom, then you know that you've got a DMN issue that you can then address with your Meolipsis technique tools. And then finally, once you've gone all through that process, we'll schedule a one-on-one session, and we can work directly on an issue that plagues you specifically. What's your biggest sticking point? So most of the things that I do, I mean, if I'm working one-on-one with somebody, it's a $10,000 minimum. Usually it's more than that, depending on the time of the engagement. So if you add all this stuff up, it's 5 figures. But I know that puts it out of the realm of most people without, mid 6-figure accounts. So I'm going to offer that to you at just a simple $1,000. So I wanted to make it a no-brainer because I feel like what's happened to me after 20 years of trading in the last 5 years is so transformational on a very selfish level that I want other people to experience that as well. And so that's it. That's what I got for you. And that is the One Brain Network that is the reason for most traders' failures. So with that, I wanted to make the presentation short and sweet to give time for questions. Let me go ahead and see if I can see those and be happy to have a little dialogue with you. And if you'd like a little taste of what this is like, I can also do that as well. Let me go back and take a look at some of the comments. All right. Yep. Huberman talks a lot about that. A lot of the benefit of psychedelics, so you're taking these hardcore drugs, is a reduction of default mode network activity. So a lot of the psilocybin studies talk a lot about the default mode network, but obviously that is a very uncontrolled and for many people illegal process. So that was not something that I could do. There's no drugs involved. There's no woo. There's no, there's nothing. All of the risks and challenges associated with other ways that people do default mode network work, either with foreknowledge or sort of backwards, through ritual and spiritual belief systems. This is not connected to that at all. Let's see. Oh, shoot. Did people not see the slides? Oh, tell me I didn't do that with a static slide. That would be frustrating. Everybody see the slides? Everybody see that okay? Go ahead and let me know. Yeah, okay, good. All right, well then, let's take the next 5 minutes and I want to literally blow your mind. All right, so let's go ahead down here. I didn't know how much time we'd have for questions. So let's go ahead and go through a quick experience with me here. Payment plan or one big payment. Actually, if you click on the button, I think PayPal offers a multiple payment option. So you can do that if you like. All right, let's go through a quick little experience now. All right, you need to be sitting down, very important, and you need to be sitting down or lying down. The only person that I've ever come across that this was not good for was a lady who was pregnant. Pushing the body out of homeostasis, as we're about to do, isn't good for someone who's dealing with pregnancy. So if that's you, then sit this one out. But for everybody else, I want to teach you two quick breath protocols, and this is a little taste of how quickly you can change your state. So the first breath protocol is real simple. You puff out, pursed lips, as if you're blowing a birthday out the candles of a birthday cake across the room. Right. So quick puffing breath. All right. And the second breath protocol is you want to actually, instead of focusing on the exhale, you want to focus on the inhale. So you're going to take the biggest breath in you can until you feel a stretching sensation in your lungs. You breathe in through your nose, your mouth, doesn't matter, whatever's comfortable. So big breath in until you feel a stretch. Once you feel that stretch, just relax and you'll naturally exhale. So those are the two breath protocols. And then the final, we're just going to take a biggest breath you possibly can. You're going to hold that stretch in your lungs and you're going to hold that air in. We're going to disrupt your endocrine system, your blood gas chemistry, and it's going to provoke a lot of changes in hormones in your body and your brain. So you're going to feel some very interesting sensations. They're all okay. You might feel some tingling. You might feel some dizziness. You're going to get a really big head rush at one point. And again, if it's uncomfortable for you, don't worry about it, but nothing but good is happening. Okay, so we're going to begin with the puffing breath. Let's begin. And puff. Switching to the inhale, focused, big breath. In, stretch, exhale. In for stretch, exhale. In for stretch, you're feeling the physiological effects, a little bit of dizziness, a little feel of cooling on my skin. Back to puffing breath. Really power up. Now the inhale and exhale. Inhale, feel the stretch. Two more. Now inhale as hard as you can with stretch and hold. I get a really strong head rush. You get a sense of sinking, undulating, a sense of coolness on my skin, tingling in the hands and feet. Strong sense of euphoria and calm will pass over you. It's a very, very pleasant feeling. And just sit, be right here in this moment now. Notice how it's very quiet inside. You haven't spent minutes or hours meditating, but you're in that deep, calm, meditative state. Whenever you need to exhale, go ahead. There's no contest here. Big exhale, and then a big inhale, and hold it. And whenever's comfortable, exhale. Now, I'm just going to be quiet for a minute. I want you to sit with your eyes closed and do a little bit of a self audit. Feel how quiet it is inside your mind. Feel how clear and emotionless you are. Probably have a kind of a happy, calm, peaceful state. Feels really good. All right. So that's just a little bit of a taste. Now imagine if you had the ability to access those sorts of feelings at will, anytime, any place that you need it. All right. Just like puffing on a vape pen or taking a pill or having some kind of a drink. You can access these levels when you need it, when your inner jerk is screaming at you when you're in a trade. You're going to stay clear, you're going to follow your rules, and you're going to get a much, much better outcome for your trading. So that is the power of meal ellipsis. The meal ellipsis technique goes much, much deeper than that, but that gives you a little bit of a taste at how instant gratification this can be. And when you start to understand how these tools exist and how you can essentially manufacture your own drugs within your body without putting some external product or molecule into your body, which may produce an effect, but always has side effects and consequences, you really transform into a different state. So with that, any other questions anybody has? Fausto, if there's anything you want to ask, go right ahead. And I am at your service. So thanks for your time and attention. I know this is coming out of left field, but I'm telling you, this is the most significant breakthrough in trading, I think, that I've ever come up with. And yeah, no, this is not something anybody else has ever had. Obviously, there's some pieces to this that come from yoga tradition. There's breath work in a lot of different indigenous cultures. So that's nothing new on that. It's the application and leveraging that for persistent change of behavior, and specifically when it comes to trading, because the behaviors are going to not just cause you angst in your life, but they're going to cause you to lose money, and more importantly, leave a hell of a lot of money on the table. Is really, really powerful. And again, this development cycle came out of my own frustration with clients that I wanted desperately to get what they paid for, to get the breakthrough that we had worked out together, looking at the mechanical technical stuff, and they just weren't. And so I've been able now to produce that for people in a way that I've never been able to before in my career. Because I can always go through and increase somebody's mathematical edge. That's not hard. My book talks about how to do that. But having somebody actually execute it and make a real world result from those enhancements, very challenging. And so now I can do that with great confidence. And it's been really the coolest thing, not only for my own selfish interest, my own trading, because I don't have to white knuckle my way through my trading day and week anymore, but it just delivers, and it just does. So a little taste of the instant gratification that's there. You can change pretty much everything you want about the way you think about yourself, self-worth, self-image, imposter syndrome, you name it. The power to shift that is available to you. So with that, welcome to a new you. Hope you join me for the seminar, learn.boyoder.com. I can't wait to share the meal ellipsis technique. Up until this point, really all my clients have been through referral, because one of these things that if you do it, you want to gush to everybody about it because it's so powerful. So it'll be really interesting to see if this has resonated with you. And again, I hope you come have a great holidays, a massively fantastic New Year's Eve, and I'll see you in the new year.
Oh, that was absolutely amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Hopefully everyone was able to try it out. That was
so much for being here. And let me